to everyone attending today. Of course, we would much rather meet in person. We are, after all, hospitality, but these are strange pandemic times. And soon enough, there will be a time when we are all together, hopefully next year. So it is now my pleasure to welcome Marie Perry, our main speaker for today. If you paid attention to what I was saying in terms of experiences, if you look at Marie's background, you'll find it just so amazing and a perfect fit with what we're trying to do. So let me just back up a little. We were going to host our annual leadership summit in the past. We've been hosting it each year. This year, due to the pandemic, we were not able to host our annual leadership summit, and Marie was going to be speaking there. Fortunately, we are able to reconvene virtually today, and we are thrilled that Marie is able to join us to address all of you today. So at the end of our talk, Marie is open to taking questions. Professor Lance will be the moderator for the Q&A session. Please add in your questions on the chat, either on the group chat or privately to Professor Lance, and then she can pose the questions to Marie. So Marie Perry recently joined Brink's as the Senior VP and Chief Financial Officer for the US region in August 2020. Yes, it's the same Brink's, the cash company, global leader in total cash management and everything related activities. This company has a network of operations in 49 countries and serves customers in many more than that. She's responsible for the strategy leadership, including financial planning, analysis, accounts payable, accounts receivable, finance, revenue, and SOX compliance. She has extensive experience in different facets of the hospitality industry. She started her career as an auditor at KPMG, advanced into accounting and finance roles at American Airlines for over 12 years. And then she transitioned throughout several leadership roles, including interim CFO, Senior VP Controller and Treasurer, and VP of Investor Relations over the next 13 years at Brinker International. She has also served as the Executive VP, CFO, and Chief Administrative Officer for Jamba Juice, where she was responsible for finance, accounting, investor relations, treasury, supply chain, and legal, among her many responsibilities. Mary currently serves on the board of directors for Ruth's Hospitality Group, Center for Brain Health Advisory Board, and Dallas Assembly Board. She has also served as board member for the Dallas Convention and Visitors Bureau and supports numerous professional and civic organizations. She co-chaired the 2019 Global Best Practices Conference and presented War on Talent at the 2018 Restaurant Finance and Development Conference. In 2017, she was the chair of the board of Women's Food Service Forum. She's recognized for her leadership in finance within several publications. She was also selected as one of the 50 most powerful and influential women in Texas, listed by the Texas Diversity magazine, and featured in the cover issue of Color of Corporate Success and Eclipse magazine. She's a certified public accountant, yes, who holds an MBA in finance from the University of Texas at Austin and received a Bachelor of Accounting from Texas A&M University. Please welcome Marie Perry.
Wonderful. Well, as the dean mentioned, I was so excited to be offered to be part of the program in the spring, and given all the changes that happened with COVID, completely understood. And so when the opportunity came to speak with the group via Zoom, I jumped all over it. So I do have some comments that I would just like to share from just my experiences. And I've titled what I wanted to share with you today is Championing Radical Change. And I think it's absolutely perfect in what the dean said and what the school is going through in terms of really reacting to what is happening and the need to really be relevant. So I'm going to start with a quick story and then just kind of jump into it. And then I really would love the opportunity to answer any questions or anything that I can share. So you've heard a little bit about my background. The one thing that I wanted to share that I have actually been working since I was 14 years old. I worked at Showplace 4 as a movie theater. I sold tickets. I was back there selling popcorn. But since I was 14, I have literally always had a job or a career. When I went to school at Texas A&M, I worked in government documents. In the summers, I was part of a program called Inroads, so I had internships. When I graduated, I went right into public accounting. When I transitioned to jobs, I literally always had a job that I went to. And even when I was in grad school, I worked while I was in school. And so when I was at Jamba, one of the directives was it was a publicly traded company. It had lost its relevance. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But it was really to take it out of the public environment and to sell it to private equity. In 2.5 years, we were very successful in doing that. And I found myself out of a job. And what was my natural instinct was, I gotta go get a job. I gotta go find something to do, because when I would go out and talk to folks, it's kind of like, hey, my name's Mary Perry. And they're like, so what do you do? Where do you work? And what I realized, I had assigned myself to a job, to an organization. And so my kind of radical change in my personal life was that I stopped and I paused and I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I'm going to take some time off. My father, who was 82 years young, would call me. I would call him back, 4 days later, and he would say, hey, busy lady. That was my handle. Call me busy lady. I wasn't in shape, so I got a Peloton, and I ended up spending time in Amarillo, Texas with my dad, spending time on myself. I got a life coach to come up with my own strategy, my future state. I mean, how many of us work on projects and think about organizations, and we think about, where do we want to take this organization 5, 10 years from now? But how much time do we ever do that for ourselves, right? And so at the end of the day, kind of taking the sabbatical was a radical change for me. And the result was that I was able to spend precious time with my father, who in July of 2019 passed away. But I mean, I have no regrets, because I was able to spend time with him, time with my husband, time with my family, time with myself. And I was able to think about what it is I want to do next. And literally landed on this amazing opportunity at Brinks, as the dean mentioned, who Brinks is 150 years old. And most of you think about armored car, but really it's a cash management organization, and embedding technology and looking for ways to really disrupt the industry. And so I want to be part of that team, part of that opportunity. And the sad part is, it's not in hospitality, which is where I spent a majority of my career. But sometimes you just never know where opportunities take you. So I want to kind of unpack a little bit about this radical change, and why radical change is even necessary. And the first, highlight is, and we all see this, is change is coming. The thing that's constant is change, and it's exponential in terms of the way it's hitting. I mean, I was reading a stat the other day that, the telephone was actually created in 1867. But it took over a century, 100 years, for landlines to be put out there for like 80% penetration. And then you look at smartphones today, like in less than 15 years, there's 86% penetration, right? I mean, things are just happening so fast that it's unbelievable. And so there's two schools of thought, right? So Steve Case, excuse me, he's a co-founder of AOL, which some of you might not even know what AOL is. One of the founders of the internet. But AOL, he said, the pace of change and the threat of disruption creates tremendous opportunity. Now, Gartner did a survey that shows that the pace of change was the top emerging risk for companies. So is it an opportunity or is it a risk? Or is it both? So I'm gonna put a challenge out there that it really is an opportunity in terms of change and the opportunities from corporations and really from an individual perspective, what we can do to really embrace what's happening. Because I can guarantee you, it's not going to go away. There is no more status quo. Things aren't going to go back to normal. And this change is just going to just come to us, right? So in the world of, we're doing 1-year plans. People are going to expect things in days and weeks. Things are just going to go a lot faster than we ever imagined. So, buckle up, it's coming. And so I'm hopefully going to give you some food for thought in terms of what we can do about it. So one of the things when I was going through my transition and going through different jobs, I have probably 3 copies of a book called The First 90 Days. The First 90 Days is a book that usually when you're starting a new company, when you're starting a new role in a company, they always give it to you and say, read this because it'll help you kind of understand what you're getting into. So it actually highlights 5 different phases. The first phase is a startup. The second is turnaround, accelerated growth, realignment, and sustaining success. And it spells out stars. So startup, turnaround, accelerated growth, realignment, and sustaining success. Right? So I'm going to make an argument that sustaining success is not relevant anymore. And if it is, it's for 6 months, 6 weeks, right? I mean, like to get on top is hard. To stay on top is almost impossible if you are not constantly thinking about being relevant. And really relevant to me is keeping up with the pace of change. And so, kind of back to this thesis about being a champion of radical change, now is the perfect time. And it's because the pace of change is so fast that there isn't a status quo, right? There's not that group of people that are probably saying, we don't do it that way. Or, we tried it, but it didn't work. I mean, we're all looking for ways to think outside of the box. We're all looking for ways to disrupt what currently is there. And so what's amazing to me is that sometimes there's like amazing opportunities for change, but it's just getting buy-in, getting people to join in on the change. Now that buy-in, it's not easy, but it's not as hard as it used to be. So what are so if we can kind of do a little deep dive, kind of unpack a little bit more some of these business stages, right? And I want to kind of think about it from individual and from a company perspective. So the first one, startup, right? And when I see startup, it's really this idea about being an entrepreneur or thinking like an entrepreneur or becoming an entrepreneur, right? And so what does that mean? An entrepreneur hustles. They think outside the box. They're nimble. They're flexible, right? They are honestly in some ways disruptive, right? Think about Airbnb. Think about Netflix. Think about all of these startup companies that really saw an opportunity to make a change and completely change the landscape. And those companies that were tethered to the way it was and the baggage and their systems and their loyalty structure, there's going to be winners and losers. And if you don't have that hustle, if you're not creative, if you're not thinking outside the box, you're not going to be able to sustain that top position of success. From an individual perspective, I challenge everybody. I mean, my career has been in corporate America. That's just kind of my gig and what I've done. But when you think about small business being the backbone of the US economy. And the fact that what they do is disruptive in nature. It is about being flexible and nimble. And really, 2/3 of the new job creations are in small businesses. So when you're thinking about opportunities and looking for opportunities, some of them are just right in front of you, right in front of you, especially when you think about restaurants and a lot of the different hospitality opportunities, they're absolutely there. Next, I want to kind of touch on the turnaround story, right? So again, back to the first 50 days, I talked a little bit about my experience at Jamba Juice, but it was a company based in California. We moved it to Texas. Apparently, California is paradise because nobody wanted to move to Texas. So we had to rehire a complete headquarters and then really focus on relevance. Jamba Juice literally created a smoothie category. But what happened, we got comfortable and we just kind of let Buddha Juice, Joe and the Juice, Nectar, Smoothie King start really kind of creeping into our space and lost our relevance. We actually hired a company in Boston, out of Boston, to help us identify not just our current state, but our future state. And what's so important about that is, again, I see so many companies and companies that I've been at, we've done this, is that you kind of look at your current state and you go, incrementally, what can I change? Right? What can I change from where I am? Well, you're making progress, but that progress just has this very low slope. If you think about where you currently are, and then you untether yourself to a future state, where do I need to be? Where do I need to be? And then you basically backcast, right? The radical change that you are going to make is so much more significant than if you started from your current state and moved forward. And that's exactly what we did with Jamba Juice. And we were able to package it in a nice, beautiful package. And we sold it to private equity out of a firm in Atlanta. And they are now taking the different strategies and initiatives and moving it forward. But it was really a way to unlock the value that Jamba had, that it will regain going forward. And I think from an individual perspective, to me, it speaks about reskilling and retraining yourself, and this idea that you just can't get comfortable. So when the dean talks about, furthering your education, thinking about the question about certificates, I mean, constantly looking for opportunities to reskill and retrain. The last one I'll touch on is accelerated growth. And again, these are ways to really just champion radical change. And I'll go back to my alma mater from a company perspective. So Brinker, when I started, had 7 different brands, restaurant brands. Today, they're down to 2, Chili's Grill and Bar and Maggiano's, Little Italy. And so when you think about the pandemic and you think about really restaurants having manufacturing in the back of the house and retail in the front of the house, and things just shutting down. And so what Chili's did is they created a concept called It's Just Wings. They partnered with DoorDash, and they basically found a way to use the capacity in the back of their kitchens, not at just Chili's, but at Maggiano's that has banquet-sized kitchens, to basically start selling wings and be a direct competitor to Wingstop out the back of their, so nothing even comes into the front, into the retail. It's all produced in the kitchen, and then it just goes out the back door. DoorDash delivers it, and they actually quoted in their last earnings call that it's going to bring in more than $3 million in sales a week. That is impressive. That is the kind of change that really all of us, from a company, from an individual perspective, really needs to be thinking about going forward. And just this idea of again, kind of retooling, rethinking, and just being this thinking outside of the box and really understanding what is it you have I have a manufacturing facility in my square footage, and how can I best utilize it, right? And this is going to probably be one of their larger brands, if you will, is this, it's just wings. And it's absolutely brilliant. And kudos to the Chili's leadership team for coming up with this. So hopefully I've shared some thought, driven some interest, giving you some food for thought about this interesting world we live in, that the pace of change is unbelievable. It's coming and we need to get ready for it. It is exponential. So just a few thoughts to leave you with is that, companies and individuals will be forced to reinvent themselves and do so in a hurry. Right? It really is just the way that the world is working now. The pace of change is here, and it's massive, and reskilling and retooling and thinking out the box are going to be critical. Like being a lifelong learner, I didn't speak about that, but again, I think it speaks to this community that we're speaking to today. And the last thing I'll say is, think about becoming a disruptor, right? It is ripe in this environment to be a disruptor, and it's not a bad thing at all. And I will suggest that I would rather be the disruptor than to be disrupted. So with that, I will hand it back over and see if there's any questions that I might be able to answer on any topic, honestly.
Marie, thank you very much. And I'm sure the best I can do is the reaction and my own applause, but I'm sure everybody else is also really appreciative to hear those words of inspiration and just, an outside objective perception to help us in the industry that we're all in right now. So thank you for those words. And I love the STARS acronym. I think that was really wonderful. I loved hearing reskilling, because we've all been trying to do that without even realizing there's a terminology for it. So I loved hearing that term. And of course, don't get comfortable, which I think we all know we can't. Does anyone have any questions for Marie? Let's see here. We've got a couple coming in here. So Marie, I'm going to read a couple your way, and there's a few others that came into me earlier actually as well. So this is from actually one of our master's students who is also teaching here too. Is the road to radical change different for corporate America than small businesses? Is there some distinction between the two? And if so, are you able to share with us what that could be?
I absolutely think it's different. I think small business is wired for radical change. It is a survival mechanism. I can't tell you how many times just being at American or being at Brinker, where it's just this idea that cash just grows on trees, that money's always going to be there, that I can move in different directions. I mean, we used to have this I don't know, it was a concern at Brinker that we had 7 brands, and every time we got a new brand president, they wanted to, take the brand up or take it down, or have the waiters, wear jeans, or then have them wear, different uniforms, and all of that was at a cost, right? And so this idea that you become in corporate America in larger organizations, I think a little more disconnected to the survival mentality, because there's systems in place, there's infrastructure, there's all these people that you look around and they're making smart decisions, and the pace of change in corporate America is just not by definition as fast as what happens in small businesses. And so, I think, again, having this entrepreneurial viewpoint, even when you're in corporate America, is critical. And I think it has to do with the leadership in some of these businesses too, that if they're going to hold on and be tethered to, the way things are, it's going to be really difficult for them to think about change.
Thank you, Marie. There's a number of questions coming in, so let me just share with you. Here, you're on the board of Roots Chris. more upscale dining experience.
Yeah.
Have you seen, now clearly we've seen small business operators and quick service being nimble to be able to stay alive at this time, but in your experience now or from your observations, have they or has fine dining made any flexible pivots so that they can help kind of adapt to this change, this rapid change?
Yes, I will tell you an interesting story. So at Ruth, we actually built a restaurant to fail fast. In Jersey City, we actually, it's $5 million investment to build a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. I mean, it's a pretty significant. So the location is very important. How you design the restaurant is very important. And so to maybe the point that was said, it was, like looking at the base of customers or for a fine dining steakhouse and who's coming and who do you want to come and how do you not disrupt, because you don't want to create something that your base customers say, I'm not even sure what this is, nor do I want to come here. So, there's opportunities to change. And so when I say we built a restaurant to fail fast, instead of spending years in creating it, went through a dynamic process, said, you know what, we're going to have the bar area be the same size as the dining area. We're going to create flexible banquet rooms that can open up and become main dining room, or you can close it with that kind of a sliding glass door concept to create different space. We're going to have different ice cubes that don't melt as fast. We're going to have bar food that, people can kind of come in, sit at the bar, have dinner and leave and not, have a 3-hour dinner experience. So yes, I know Ruth is definitely looking at how to evolve because again, if we do nothing, we will not survive.
Thank you. There are a number of questions here that are related, and it's actually a personal question of you, but about your professional experience. And so we've got someone who wanted to ask about growing into the role of a CFO. What were some of the tangible skill sets, maybe the hard skills that you needed, as well as the emotional skills that you needed to grow up into a CFO role? And I think there was another related question in terms of, well, I'll add that later. The part B I'll get to. So let's, if you don't mind sharing that in terms of, I guess, the tangible, the soft and the hard skills for growing into a role of a CFO.
Yeah. Now, one of the things, and I know this goes for anyone, but it was referenced that I was the chair for Women's Food Service Forum, and that's in the restaurant industry. And it was a fascinating organization. It is a fascinating organization because it really is around elevating women leaders in the restaurant space. And so, it's not just the operators, so the Chili's, the Chick-fil-A's, the Dardens of the world, but it was also the manufacturers. So it was Coke and Pepsi, and then it was the distributors. It was McLean, and it was Cisco, and it was Georgia Pacific. So it was this group of people that got together and said, they really want to identify ways to elevate women. And one of the main factors was business acumen. And so this idea that no matter what your profession is, there needs to be an ability to understand a P&L, right? And levers in how a P&L works. I use the example of Chili's, and so they created a different revenue. So how do I grow my revenue, right? Rate volume. I can grow it by increasing my pricing. I can create a new channel. I can open up new restaurants. How do I impact the middle of my P&L? And so, the thing that I would say, and not everybody wants to even be a CFO, but I would say just in corporate America, having that business acumen, that financial acumen is absolutely critical. And I mentioned WFF, and so there was a McKinsey study. And it was like, well, why, when women kind of start out 50-50 in entry-level jobs, but when you go up to senior managers, senior director, VP, that those numbers start declining. And a lot of it was that, there's opportunities to kind of just improve that business acumen. From a softer skill, I just always lean on communication. Like if I know something, and so I was just talking to at Brink's, we have a quarterly earnings call. And so, they want to be able to man on the street share the business results with the broader team, right? I can sit there and show you my press release for the earnings, but if I start talking about EPS and non-GAAP and GAAP and operating margin, operating profit, and labor, I mean, I might, catch 50% of the audience, and I might lose 50% of the audience. But how do we turn that into the man on the street conversation? And so I would just say in my career, I focused a lot on how to effectively and efficiently communicate to any audience the content that I have.
Awesome. There's a number of additional questions. Thank you, Marie. There's a number of questions coming in from our graduate students, actually. This one is, we've got the external forces that are causing change at this moment, the pandemic, of course. And in this country, we've got other social causes happening that are affecting change: environmental consciousness, social consciousness, equity and justice consciousness. And so how, from a leadership perspective, is it best to tackle all of these forces at once and risk not giving fuller attention to all? Do we spread ourselves too thin? Do we approach it one at a time? Based on your experience in the C-suite, do you have any thoughts on sort of how to handle all the forces that are around us that have to make us change and adapt?
That one is a great question. I'll give my personal perspective on that. And I do think there is a need to address thoughtfully all of those. I mean, what I have seen in the last, 6 months is how companies are now having to react because either team members are doing something in this realm that you just mentioned that is impacting the company, right? And so the company has to have a position on, the social injustice, on environmental, on, just inequities that are out there. And from an internal perspective, from a team member perspective, to make sure that your team members know where you are. And then it can't just be words, right? I know there's a lot of companies wanting to put statements out there, that they're wanting to, just kind of have these statements or contribute to different causes. And I think that's great. But the reality is it's not sticky enough, right? There has to be something where the employee, that the consumers believe that what the customer is saying that they mean. And that is, I think, what really takes time. And because, as you noted, there's so many different areas outside of, in the past, it just felt like, at Chili's, I just had to know kind of, am I going to have burger and fries, or am I going to, put, a vegan burger out there, or am I going to, it was these decisions that you make, but now management is having to broaden some of their consideration set when they're making decisions. And I do believe that from a leadership perspective, I'll be honest, at Brink's, we don't have a head of diversity. And one of the things that we just completed a survey to really kind of come up with a baseline, and we're going to bring somebody in around diversity and inclusion to really have that person have a role that is 100% focused on driving change for our organization.
Top subject. Well, a lot of forces right now that are impacting leadership, and I think we've even seen in hospitality which leaders are thriving and which ones, we've had a few casualties along the way because of some missteps or some denial of the forces around us. So we have seen that even in our business.
Right.
Here's another interesting question and comment. Someone shared, I think this is one of our grad students as well, a recent report just came out stating that 1 out of 4 women will not be going back to work in the manager to senior level after the pandemic is over. How do we think this could affect businesses in terms of innovation, disruption, the market, with that lack of women going back to work because of lack of jobs, I would imagine?
Yeah, or, I wonder too if it's just even responsibilities, right? Who's going to, kind of care for the kids, or to your point, it's just kind of what level of jobs there are. And so I think from a company perspective, offering as much flexibility as you can. I actually just spoke to a colleague of mine at Starbucks, and they are just maniacal about, just saying that we understand what's going on, and, we want to be flexible for you so that you can manage your family life and your personal needs around your job, because we understand you bring your whole self to work, right? And so if there are all these competing forces and areas where you're struggling, you're bringing that to work. And so we want to figure out kind of how do we partner with you to help you bring your whole self to work and be a little bit more flexible. I do agree that that's probably some of it. Some of it is probably just that the jobs are going away, and maybe from a female perspective, those jobs that are going away are mostly held by women. I think that just means that it's just going to be a lot harder. McKinsey did a study that said it was going to take 100 years for women to reach parity with men. For that discussion I had, like we all 50-50, the starting jobs, it's 50-50 women and men. But as we kind of go up the ladder, that changes. And so if that happens, we just have a whole lot more work to do.
We do have time for a couple more minutes for a few more questions, if that's okay with you, Marie. We do have a question. Let's see here. For each of the roles that you've had, and you've had some senior executive roles, how did you prepare for each of these new steps, whether it was emotional preparation, skill set preparation, because you've taken on some big roles and you've been blessed with a great career so far, and you've earned it, obviously. Just how did you prepare for each of these steps and for the roles that took you higher up on these ladders in the different companies?
So I'll tell you, I'm not sure it's a secret. It was a former CEO of Chili's, or Brinker, excuse me, that when I started, so I left American Airlines, it was 75 billion in revenue, and I went to Brinker, which at the time again had 7 brands. It was about 4 billion in revenue. And airlines, it's a market share game, right? It's like for me to kind of get you to fly on my airline, I got to steal you from Delta United. Well, at the time, restaurants, you really couldn't build a restaurant on First and Main anymore, right? So I had to kind of steal you from Applebee's or Fridays or whatever. So they wanted to bring people in that had that mentality and start like trying to, support the business in ways of thinking. But the CEO brought me aside and said, Marie, I know you're really smart, and I know you're very capable. He goes, but for the first, and I don't know if it can exist today, but I mean, it's something like this. He said, but I want you to really, when you come in, I want you to listen. And I want you to hear why we do the things we do today. And then I want you to speak. Because a lot of times I think when we are brought into new roles, new organizations, like, well, they brought me in because they want me to make change and they want me to tell them everything that I know. And they, and sometimes they want to make sure, you need to make sure that you understand, what happened and what were the constraints of why, because we all have these great, perfect ideas. And then when it rolls out, we have to cut here a little, do something here a little bit, right? And so you don't get it 100% perfect. And so this idea is that you don't want to call somebody's baby ugly. Like you just don't want to call their baby ugly. And so you want to understand why it is the way it is. And then by your understanding, you have a greater ability to affect change. Now, I just talked about earlier is like that stuff is happening now, right? So that whole kind of greasing the wheel and easing into things, I mean, you probably have to do some of that. But that idea of just listening and having that mentality of being this fast learner and absorbing, I mean, like I at Brinks right now, I'm in a whole different industry. And I just tell people, I said, I'm drinking out of a fire hose. I'm literally drinking out of a fire hose. But I love it, right? And now I think it's a water hose. It's kind of getting a little easier for 8 weeks. But it's that being that thirst, just constantly asking questions. So I don't really know if I prepared going into it, but it's that first, kind of 8 weeks, 6 months that I think is critical.
Thanks, Marie. Thanks. We have just one last question before we'll wrap it up. We know you've got meetings to get to also, and we've got some networking we want to do. But the last question actually relates to the STARS acronym that you shared with us earlier. And so what is being asked here is, how do you know when you're in each stage? Is it possible to sort of identify when you go from startup into turnaround into accelerated growth? Is it a flow? Does it circle back? Is the ultimate goal the sustaining success? Can you help us sort of better understand how that system works?
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing about it. It's not circular. It's not, you can skip around. I mean, you can stay in the startup mode, and then move on to it. Like if your mentality is that hustle, that I've got to, Apple, right? They constantly cannibalize their product every year, or do they create demand? Like they're constantly thinking of a very short period of time that their products are going to be out there, right? But I mean, it just, you kind of get a sense, and it's really maybe, doing that exercise between your current state and your future state, right? And understanding what kind of change. I mean, so at Jamba Juice, it became very clear it was a turnaround because we got stuck. We were on top and we got stuck. And so, we needed to really turn the business around. Again, Chili's, I'm not sure there's an opportunity, I don't know. I mean, it's casual dining. There's a kind of a sea of sameness. And so, their opportunity was this accelerated growth and to create a new channel. And so I do think it is one by one. It is assessing where you are and understanding where that true opportunity is in the future.
Thank you. You gave us a lot to think about. Thank you so much. Dean Upneja, I don't know if you have any closing words while Marie is still here before we go on.
Marie, thank you. I want to echo Leora's comments. You've really given us a lot to think about. Your words have been very strong, very powerful. And I think everyone will be great to take heed to those lessons that you've learned and conveyed today. I hope that this is not the last engagement we have with you, Marie. I hope that you continue to engage with Shaw as we move on our journey, on our new strategic plan that is coming, that we are working on currently. And as we move into other industries, a lot of them that you already have a lot of exposure and experience in. So my sincere thanks on behalf of the school, the faculty at Shaw, and the alumni. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I just thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.